This video, we're going to do a little bit more learning about if statements. I want to focus on the different types of conditions you can check for. There's a lot more about if statements, but we're just keeping it as basic as we can. We're not adding Booleans, we're not adding else ifs or elses yet. We're trying to just stick on ifs to keep this simple. But that's a little foreshadowing, right? This gets like, if statements is where it really starts to get exciting. You get to have the program interact with you. You get to make decisions depending on what happens. It really, really gets more complex, but for also adding like a lot more power to what you can do with your programs. So what I have right here is just a simple little kind of target practice game where I can click run, and anywhere I click, it creates an X. And, you know, it's simulating like a dartboard or something where you're trying to click the bullseye. What I want to do is add an if statement here that will do different things depending on where you end up clicking and where you end up like shooting the little dart. So we've got on mouse press an X and a Y coordinate. Maybe I should be calling this the mouse X and the mouse Y just for clarity. And I probably should be putting comments in, but I just want to get to the content here. So let's see, mouse X and mouse Y. And let's do some kind of real basic ones to start off. So I'm going to say if the mouse X is greater than 200, and then a colon, I might just create a label at, let's create a label at maybe the, well, we'll create a label saying like missed to the right. And then we'll put it at the current mouse X coordinates, and we'll say the mouse Y, but we'll do minus 10 maybe. And so what this will do is when I run this, I'm clicking to the left side of the screen. Nothing is happening other than just the X, because this if statement checks to see if my mouse X is bigger than 200. And so far, my mouse X's have been at 77, 122, 102. If I go to the right, it's going to start doing that part that's in the if, right? I said missed and to the right. And if I go too far to the left, it's just going to click the X, because that's how if statements work. You check to see if this condition is true. If it is, you do whatever is inside of that if statement shown by it being indented. If it's not true, you just skip that part of it. We can change this to be all different sorts of things. Maybe I could say if it's greater than or equal to, though that's kind of tough, right? Like I guess we can test it out right here. Is this X at oh, look at that. So this X is at exactly 200 because the X is exactly 200. It did not run the if statement here, right? This says if the mouse X is greater than 200. I can make greater than or equal to by doing the greater than sign and then equal to. And if I run this now, I'll see greater than 200. It's at 251. It draws that. If I make it, let me see, I can get my mouse coordinates here, make my mouse exactly 200. It'll say miss to the right because that's what the if statement tells it to do. And if I go all the way to like, you know, even 194, it's not miss to the right. It's gone a little bit to the left. You can do the exact same thing with the less than sign, right? I can have less than or equal to, or just straight up less than. And maybe I'd say missed to the left. And if I run this, now when I click to the right, it's skipping what's in the if statement because we said if the mouse X is less than 200. If I click to the left, it'll say that I missed to the left. Hopefully this is sort of making some sort of sense. Let's see, what else can we add over here? So we've checked less than, greater than or equal to. I'm sure you understand how less than or equal to would work. There is also equals equals. This checks if whatever's on the left is exactly the same as on the right. And so we could say, you know, directly center. And so now it will only print this label exactly when the mouse X is equal to 200. So let's see. If I run this and I click to the right, I click to the left, it's not. Oh, wow, I got really lucky that I hit exactly 200. If my X is exactly 200, it will print that label directly center. And it's only checking if the X is, so it'll, do that wherever I am, X 200. The Y it doesn't care about. If I go a little bit to the left, it's just going to print the X. You can also check, super, super, super important thing. If I only have a single equal sign, that's not going to work out because that is all, and it's going to give you a syntax error. You can't even run it because the single equal sign is used for assigning something a value, right? You make a variable, assign the value, and then I made this variable called Bullseye. I gave it the value of this entire circle. The single equal sign is for giving something a value. The double equal sign is for checking whether or not these two things are the same. And if they are, it'll come up as true. If they're not, it'll come up as false. The final condition that we're going to talk about in this video is not equal. And I know that if my mouse X is not equal to 200, I could say, you missed, haha. And now, this reads not equal. This will be true. This whole thing, the mouse X not equal to 200, will be true if the mouse X isn't 200. If it is 200, it will be false, and it will not run the if statement. So it's true, haha, you missed, haha, you missed, haha, you missed. Even, right? Like all this is going to say, haha, I missed. Once I put my X at exactly 200, it will not say the haha, you missed, because once the X is 200, they are equal. So this is checking for them to not be equal. It makes it false. Notice though, we have an error. If I go to over here, clearly I did not hit the bullseye, but it doesn't say that I missed. And that's because we only know how to deal with one if. So we can only check if the X is exactly 200 or not 200. We'd want to be able to check both the X and the Y at the same time. That's for a later video. The only last thing that I wanted to talk about in this video, and hopefully that's not making it go on too long, is you don't need to just check against magic numbers. You can check variables against other variables. So that's why I included this bullseye over here. I can, instead of saying 200, I can say the bullseye dot center X. And now maybe I'll just say, direct hit. I'm going to say if the mouse X is equal to the bullseye's center X, it will give me a direct hit little label over there. So let's try running it here. When I click, whatever, it's not the same. Once I get my X at exactly the same, so it should be 200 because that's what the bullseye's center X is. If I make it exactly 200 here, it should say direct hit. We have that same error where if it's 200 up here, it says direct hit. Again, an issue for a later day. The nice thing about this, instead of using a magical number like we had before where it was bullseye equals 200, is if I move my bullseye, maybe we'll make this bullseye blue so we can find it. If I move my bullseye to like 250, I only need to change one thing, right? So now, even though I'm at exactly 200, it's not saying direct hit. I need to be the exact same X coordinate as the bullseye, and you can check against that instead. So there's a lot of power, even with just the if statement. No else ifs, not doubling up on ifs, and not adding multiple checks inside of the condition here. There's a lot that we can already do. I recommend you move on to, this was what, 3.2.1. Try the exercises on 3.2.2. I'm going to post a challenge that uses a counter with this, and hopefully you start to see the power of the if statement before we start and understand the if statement before we start moving on to more complicated versions of the if statement.